G'day everyone, welcome back to Europe 1100. This is Fat Rod, aka Rodimus, back with another troop testing video. So today we're looking at Spain versus the Berbers, and a couple of different unit types we haven't looked at before. We've got an infantry skirmisher, as well as a mounted skirmisher, and also the first heavy cavalry versus heavy cavalry test. So should be some interesting results yet again. Let's get into it. Okay, so first matchup here, we've got 100 of our Berber Ghazis versus 100 of our Spanish Jinetes. So this is a heavy skirmisher infantry versus a light skirmisher cavalry. This is an interesting one because both have got throwing spears, and I'm keen to see if, the mounted troop, even though they're more lightly armoured, do they have the advantage being mounted and being faster? And basically what we see is that the Jinetes actually win every single time, and with a pretty decent amount of troops remaining with 38%. So a win for light cavalry, which I'm pretty happy about after what we saw with the last video. It's good to see a scenario where light cavalry actually proving really effective. I then decided to run this test again with some different numbers. So this time only 50 Jinetes versus 75 Ghazi, and in that scenario the Berbers actually winning the majority of the time. But both units taking quite a lot of casualties, and only 13 and 23% troops remaining respectively. So I think what that tells us is those numbers are a pretty even matchup for this unit type, for a heavy infantry skirmisher and a light skirmisher cavalry. Okay, our next matchup here is 100 of our Spanish Bidets, no idea if I'm saying that correctly, versus 100 of our Berber Ghazis. So both skirmisher units, but the Spanish are less lightly armoured and have twice the number of javelins, whereas the Berbers heavy armour as well as a shield. So I was actually expecting this to be a bit of a whitewash. I thought the Berbers would easily win this every time, but when we look at the numbers, the Spanish actually win 1 out of 5, and the kill ratios are actually quite similar, both doing a lot of damage. So I actually think these units are relatively balanced for what they are. The key to making the Spanish troops work is going to be keeping them at range so that they can use all of their javelins before they have to engage at melee. But yeah, pretty happy with how that one's turned out. Okay, so this time we've got 100 of our Spanish Ballesteros versus 100 of our Berber Lamtunah archers. So again, a tier 4 crossbow versus longbow. So the Spanish troops are a bit more heavily armoured, and I did think they would win, especially when they get into melee range. But looking at the numbers, it's actually the complete opposite. The Berbers winning every single time, and with 42% troops remaining. So this one actually wasn't even close. The Berber troops absolutely dominating. So I guess another example of the longbow outperforming the crossbow, which really, I think this is definitely calls for balance. I'm probably going to try upgrading the crossbows on every single unit where I can, and see if that makes a difference, because at the moment longbow outperforming it every single time. Okay, last matchup here is the Berber heavy Granadines versus the Spanish noble Caballeros. So both tier 6 heavy cavalry. You can see it kind of descends into a brawl pretty quickly. They kind of stop charging once they get stuck on each other, which is what happens in a large battle anyway, I've found. But this actually ended up being pretty close matchup. So even though the Berber troops came out on top, I think if I ran this 10 times, it'd probably be closer to 50%. And we can see with the average troops remaining between 11 and 20%, it's a pretty close matchup. So I think this one tells us that heavy cavalry more or less operating as expected. Okay, so that's it for our Spain versus Berber matchup. Once again, some interesting results. Now, even though the Berbers won 4 out of 5, 2 of these matchups were very close and probably could have gone either way. So overall, these two cultures are quite closely matched. The Spanish Jinete, at either the same number of troops or even slightly outnumbered, proving quite effective as a skirmisher. The Ghazi is the much more effective infantry skirmisher compared to the Bidet. And the Bidet obviously needing manual control to be fully effective. Once again, longbow completely outclasses the crossbow, and that is one I'm going to have to take a look at for balance. And then our heavy cavalry pretty evenly matched, so they're operating kind of as expected, which is good. So that's it for this video. I want to give a quick plug to my Discord server. If you head over to the competitions channel, which I'll link in the description, when I start measuring the mercenary clans, I had the idea of running a sweepstake competition. So people would essentially get assigned one of those clans, and I'll run the testing as a knockout competition. Essentially, one winner takes all. So at this stage, just gauging interest. If that's something, it's just designed to be a bit of fun while I'm making these videos. If that's something you'd be interested in, just come over to Discord and complete the poll on the competitions page, and yeah, I'll look at running that if we get enough interest. So that's it for this video. If you're enjoying this content, I'd love it if you could subscribe to the channel. It helps me a lot, and we'll get the next one of these out in the very near future. See you next time.